Hello there and welcome to my guide for painting the zombies, brutes and runners for Marvel Zombies X-Men Resistance. As you can see, what I've done first is spray them all with matte black spray from Colourforge. All of these will also be painted using the slap chop method, so make sure you get some abandoned black to cover up any areas where the spray might have missed, as we want to make sure that everywhere's got enough coverage for when we start using the dry brushing. So the very first thing we'll be doing is dry brushing the entirety of the model with some Dawnstone. Make sure you get in between the legs and under the arms as well. Once we've done that, we're then going to use some Corvus White, and this time it's going to be a little bit of a lighter dry brush, but we're going to dry brush the entire model again, trying to hit as many points as we can, but also keeping that Dawnstone and black a little bit visible, as that will now be our shading. So before we start adding any additional colours, this is what you're sort of aiming for as an end result. I'm going to kick things off with the brutes, and I'm going to use some Creed camo to paint the tank sections of their body. This will be followed by some broadsword silver for any metal areas. And then lastly, I'll be using some peachy flesh for all of their skin. After that, I'm then going to continue painting their skin, but I'm going to use a little bit of Flayed One flesh just to highlight certain sections to make them stand out a little bit more and make them look a little bit paler. Next, for all the pustules, I'm going to use some Pallid Witch flesh. Then for any wires, I'm going to use some Mephiston red. Then to give the wires a little bit of shading, I use some Reikland flesh shade. For the lights in the centre, I started with some Thousand Suns blue, followed by some Barahoth blue, and then finally matte white for a white dot in the centre. Moving on to the runners, for the blue I use some Beowulf blue, and this was then dry brushed with a little bit of Calgar blue just to pick out the highlights. Any red areas were painted with Slaughter red. And these sections were then highlighted with a little bit of Mephiston red. And then as my camera completely loses focus, I use some Pallid Bone on the masks, which was highlighted with some Wraithbone. Any exposed skin was then painted with some peachy flesh, taking care to avoid painting the teeth. With the runners out of the way, it's time to move on to the walkers. These are all multiple man. They're all got the same outfit. They're all wearing exactly the same clothing, so they're all going to have the same colour scheme. His trousers are purple, so we're going to use some Purple Swarm for that. For the green, we're going to use some Orc Skin. The yellow will be using Zealot Yellow. For the skin, we're going to use some Peachy Flesh. For the X of the belt buckle, we're going to use some Broadsword Silver. And then lastly, for his belt, his shoes and his hair, we're going to use some Grim Black. Then we're going to move on to the eyes, and we're going to use some Fire Dragon Bright for those. I'm only going to paint the eyes of the brutes and the runners, as I kind of like the sunken in look of the multiple men. Then for the base of the brutes, I'm going to paint that with some Dryad Bark, which I then get dry brushed with some Karak Stone. For the runners and the walkers bases, I'm going to use some Dawnstone. And that'll get dry brushed with some Grey Seer. Then there's some metal grates on some of the walkers, so for that I'm going to use some Iron Hand Steel. Then I'll neaten up all the rims of the bases with some Abaddon Black. Then these bases will be washed with some watered down Agrax Earthshade. And then finally I'm going to use some blood for the Blood God to add some gore around the hands and the face and a little bit down the shirt of all the zombies. And with that, that's all the zombies finished. I've got to say, I've had mixed feelings about painting these. One hand, it's been quite easy using the slap-chop method. On the other hand, I'm not exactly 100% satisfied with the slap-chop method, but it did save me a lot of time. They only took roughly about 10 hours to get all of them done. And when I mean all of them, I mean all of them. There's quite a few here. You're about to see in the next shot. Thank you so much for watching. If you use this guide, I really do hope it helped. We've got plenty more Marvel Zombie stuff on the channel, and if you want to see more, give us a subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.